Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Beginning After the End, Season 1, Episode 12. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, we have Arthur making his way to Osiris Guild. What I thought was interesting, and I think I might have brought this up last episode, at first I didn't know what the purpose of the mask was, but I was like, oh, is that to help him kind of do vigilante stuff without it kind of coming back to him? And it's like, well, that's true to maybe some small extent later on, maybe, but it's mainly to hide his identity at the guild because you had a kerfuffle with the royal family, and if they find out you're doing stuff, they could interfere. So it's like it's mainly just to kind of like be able to kind of do his thing without interfering. So, and also he's going by a pseudonym. When they were asking like, "Oh, what's your name going to be?" I was like, "Oh, is he going to go by his original name of Gray?" But then as I know, he chose the name Note. I was like, "Oh, interesting." I assumed that to me the easy grab there would have been Gray because it's like, well. But I guess there's also maybe a part of Arthur that's like, I don't want to be associated with like, I want to hold on to a little bit of who I was, but like maybe that'd be holding on to too much of who I was in my previous life. Maybe that was it. We learned some interesting things about Jasmine along the way, like because we got introduced to Caspian, who's like the head of the guild here, and apparently the reason why he's letting like there's supposed to be like a written assignment and stuff, but they're bypassing all that for Arthur, or Note rather, because of Jasmine, because like her family's influence. And it's like, oh, like her family has ties to this guild. In what capacity, I don't know, but she just says like there's a connection between her family and Caspian. I think specifically it was like her parents and Caspian. But yeah, we get introduced to some of the other young guild members. We meet Elijah, who was able to kind of jump the whole thing and not have to participate, and immediately was locked into B rank. Then there's Lucas, who we find out is half elven, who they were initially, because he got bumped down to D, right? Because he was trying to aim for A because he was coming in like a hot shot. But the problem was like his attitude about things, because he thought he was better than everyone. He's going up against the test instructor, and he lost control of his attack, which is like, oh, that was still pretty impressive. You have high potential, but then he was he did a dirt tactic of like he tried to send out an attack, but Arthur's the one that like stopped it. And like that poor sportsmanship, that bad attitude is what got him like bumped down nowhere near obviously what he wanted to be. But we find out, like I said, he's half elven. So, and they're saying like his family has a tendency to like kind of go about making elves and stuff. Cause like I think they were saying like his parents are like elven slaves or something like that. So I'm wondering if it's like they were saying like it was kind of like a nasty way he came about. So I'm wondering like someone trying to like combine their, like, I don't know if it's like a very nasty, like, oh, you like someone making a move on an elven slave, whether it was intentional to produce, Lucas, or whether it was a situation of he was a byproduct that just so like he probably feels the need, he has a lot to prove just because of his background, and it's probably caused him to have a little bit of like edge to him, because Caspian talks about it later on that there's kind of this exchange program that's kind of been going on, and so now the barrier for like people that outside of just regular humans being a part of the guild has like kind of going down. So like elves and dwarves have kind of been a part of that exchange program. In fact, Elijah was raised in like the kingdom of the dwarves, and Caspian didn't go into it, but whoever backs him is very influential and powerful that Caspian can't really nudge, like, other than like, yeah, we're going to read Elijah in as what he is, but he's going to bypass everything. So I thought that was fascinating. And then obviously there was the assessment for Arthur, which I thought was interesting. Like he immediately like has that dark energy around himself. I don't know if that was a little bit of gray coming out in that moment, but Caspian's the one that decides to take over the assessment, and we see a little bit of the clashing between them. To be fair, not Caspian, Arthur never used every trick to his disposal. He mainly stuck to fire magic. But even Caspian looked at it like, wow, that guy, he has a lot of potential. It's not even just the magic, it's his sword skills. He's like, the only reason why there's awkwardness in his movements is just because his body can't keep up with his growth. I mean, once again, he's got all the tactics and all the training of his previous life. That skill, like, still flows through him. Once again, he's too young to basically be pulling off the stuff that he knows. It's like his brain knows what to do, but his body isn't at that age and growth yet to compensate for that disparity between the two. And I thought it was interesting because he kind of calls Arthur out partway through the fight of just kind of like, don't be so full of yourself. And Arthur kind of comments on it later, like, oh, right, I got so content with like the magical powers I got in this world, I kind of forsake the meticulous sword training I went through in my previous life, because I didn't have, like, yeah, we had key and kind of chi stuff, but like we didn't have the full-blown magic of this world. And I don't know if it's a situation of like he's putting himself down a little of like, right, I've kind of gotten complacent in this world because I've like, oh, this magic, and it's like I'm reading the situation wrong. I'm letting, I don't know if it's like a little bit of my cockiness from my previous life like kind of infiltrate me, but it's like, right, I need to kind of rein that in immediately and not let my arrogance get the best of me, because of someone like Caspian to kind of help humbling him a little of like, I am skilled, but like don't get it twisted that there is still so much I can learn. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see like him, like his run-ins are going to be with the other guild members, but in particular Elijah and Lucas, especially because Lucas is kind of taking notice of him. So it's like, I'm curious to see what those interactions are going to be like. There's probably a lot of animosity brewing, and we'll see whether they become really good friends, because just like that elven dude who came here from that immediately had animosity with Arthur when Arthur was coming back, but traveled with Arthur to like get back to his family. We haven't seen what he's been up to, so I'm curious. Have they gone back to their homes in that time frame, or not? Either way, I thought it was also interesting when they went to that beast grazing location, him and Jasmine, and there was that kind of giant boar monster that got free, because it's not supposed to be from that area, but it was like they were transporting it, and then like apparently it broke free and caused havoc. That poor guy got devoured. I thought maybe someone's gonna be able to save him in time. It's like, nope, he got gobbled up. But Jasmine was kind of fighting it off and holding it off to an extent, but then Arthur, and I thought it was interesting that representation of like in his mind, it's like Gray was talking to him like, right, you'll kind of wait for your moment, and he draws his other sword because he hasn't used it in this time frame obviously, and strikes the creature down. But then Jasmine kind of chastises him for like, right, kind of going off on his own, and she's like, yeah, I wish you would look a little more panicked about that situation. Don't just kind of, for once, she wanted him to kind of step away, and obviously like he ended up helping her partway through the fight, but it was like, I want you to kind of not be so calm in a situation. I wish you were a little more panicked, don't act so grown up type of. It's kind of my way of what I took away from it. But like I said, we learn more about Jasmine as well, because she explains to Arthur who her family is. That is like, because I think Caspian said it himself. He was like, Jasmine's family produces like, I think like her parents are like the two strongest fire mages in the human kingdom. And so their family is prominent. I mean, it even goes into her last name, like Flamesworth. And she, probably very much like Arthur, came to her magic at a very young age. In fact, amongst her siblings, she came to it the earliest. So there was a lot of expectations put on her. But sadly, she's viewed as a good for nothing because I thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, interesting. Your family uses fire magic, but you use wind. And because she's like, because she said she became a adventurer to get away from her family. And I was wondering, like, is that why you don't use fire magic and don't stick to like mainly wind magic because you're trying to distance yourself? It's because she can't. The irony is she's from one of the most powerful fire mage families and she can't use fire, and that makes her ostracize the black sheep of her family. And Arthur doesn't appreciate that. Like, he kind of is upset to hear that, but it's also because he feels like he, like, as a kindred spirit, he's like, in my previous life I was a good for nothing. Like, no one saw anything special in him. The little we picked up about Arthur back when he was gray in his previous life was, he grew up in an orphanage. So once again, I don't know if his parents were killed, whether he was abandoned, but people looked down upon him. Eventually rose to the position of king and stuff. But I'm actually trying to remember, do we know how Arthur died in his original life? Like, he probably got, like, someone killed him, but I don't remember us ever covering that. Maybe we did, and it's just been a while, so I'm misremembering. So do correct me in the comments down below. If it's something that just hasn't been covered yet, don't worry about it. You don't have to, but, like, just let me know, at least in anime, has it been something that was covered and I'm just misremembering? If it was covered, you can talk about it, but if it's something that gets covered later on in the story, then obviously don't spoil anything. Because it's interesting, because Jasmine comes at it from the perspective of, like, she kind of had a bit of an issue initially, because she's talking to Arthur about the whole cooperating with people. It's kind of like that's something that didn't come easy to her, but it's like being with the twin horns. She's like, yeah, they get on my case about stuff, but like they're the reason I've changed little by little, and now I'm better at cooperating with people. I've kind of opened up and changed, and that's also, I think, what makes the dynamic between her and Arthur stand out too, is because outside of the twin horns, it seems like he's the only person she really like opened up to out of nowhere. So, but Arthur's even kind of wondering to himself, it's like, yo, like, can I really change? Because I think he's so worried about, like, maybe he feels like he falls into the habits of still being who he was as Gray. Like, there's still so much of that he thought maybe kind of disappeared, but it's still there. So I'm curious to fully explore the whole notion of, can he really change, and and I guess also for the betterment of being a better person than he was in his original life, and taking the opportunity to grow stronger once again, to protect people, to be there for his family. I also love the Tessia of watching him situation, but it's also just like, why does he have to be traveling with a woman? It's almost like she's like every time he turns around, it's like he's switching up, and her grandfather's watching, and he gives her a book. I don't know if that's going to be a thing of, he's like, oh, are you jealous of Arthur? Well, here, I don't know if it's like she's going to continue her training in regards of, like, I don't know what the book was. I don't know if that's like kind of implying like maybe she'll become an adventurer. I'd assume not, considering she's a princess, or maybe it's like part of that exchange program, and maybe she'll be near Arthur again. I don't know what that's about, or at least it's like, right, if you grow more powerful and find yourself in your lean into your princess position, maybe, just maybe, that means you and Arthur can reunite again under different circumstances. Maybe I don't know if that's what that's implying or what that is. What I wasn't expecting was the 2-year time skip. It's like this series does not shy away from like, oh yeah, we're time skipping around. And I brought this up previously during one of the other time skips. I think it was like specifically from like Arthur going from 5 to 8, that 3-year period when he was living with the elves or whatever. I was like, oh, I'm wondering, is Arthur if the I said, like, does the novel or the webtoon, do either one of them like cover those periods, and did the anime just condense it and kind of skip over it, or is it handled exactly the same in the novel or a webtoon? I'm so curious. Once again, we are picking up a character, like, we literally started with him as an infant, so there's a lot of time skipping to evolve, to skip over. There's a lot of life and history to get through, but it's like you're focusing on kind of like the major moments of his life, rather than like, oh, all of this story and stuff happens at these very specific, like a situation of, like, take Naruto for example, like all of Naruto happening while Naruto's like 12 to 13, and then obviously the events of, well, Shippuden anime wise, but obviously just the manga continuing of Naruto. But it's like, yeah, then you have this other stretch of story that's happening at him from basically like 15 to 16, or maybe even older. So you see what I mean? Whereas like Arthur, it's like, here's some bullet points of stuff that happens that's crucial to him at this age. then we move over to this age. Like we're jumping to different ages. And also, I thought Arthur. Sorry, I say the word. When I say Arthur, I don't know if that's just like my accent that slips in or what. Where it's just like Arthur and Arthur. Like I struggle with that sometimes. Sorry, but Arthur, he is never the ages I thought he'd be. Like for example, him here with his mask and stuff. I was like, oh, I thought when we kept seeing that older version of you in like the opening and the ending, I was like, oh, that's you at like a way later teenage age. But it's like, no, it's not. It's you way younger than I thought you were. So that's something I've had to kind of contend with. So it's interesting considering like the intro and outro. Like, I guess technically I wasn't paying as much attention to his hair, but I'm like, because him where he is with the mask, I think at the end of last episode and beginning most of this episode is the oldest we see him in like the intro. I still wasn't paying as much attention to his hair. All I paid attention to was like him wearing the mask. But in the outro, like if the hair's the same as where it ends up at the end, so it's like, okay, so around this time is like the oldest we've seen him in this story. So maybe going forward, this stretch of how old he is, we might be here longer than the other periods. Maybe not, because it's a 2-year time skip, and he gave himself 3 years of like being with the adventurer, being a part of the Adventurers Guild before enrolling at the academy. So, which once again could go back to Tessia, like she might like exchange programmed her way to the academy because she knows that Arthur's eventually going to go there because she's keeping an eye on him, seeing how he's progressing and everything. So I don't know if that's where everything's going to basically collide for their storylines or not, but he has gained a bit of a reputation as Note, but they really just know him mainly as the masked swordsman, where it's like, hey, people saw him like know he kicks it with Jasmine, but there's still kind of the rumor he's such a enigma that people don't really know about. But I'm curious to see, like, because it has been 2 years, what is he going to be up to in his final year of adventuring before he goes into the academy? It's going to be really interesting to see when we kind of catch up to Arthur and see how much he's changed and grown in these 2 years alongside Jasmine. I mean, that's been like his main partner. So I'm curious, has he interacted and going on at jobs with like the Twin Horns at all? Have they all cooperated, or has he mainly just been kicking it with Jasmine this 2-year period? Probably, interacting with the other members of the guild, and I wonder if that includes Elijah or Lucas, or have they kind of kept to themselves? Yeah, stuff like that. It's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be any exploration of that, or filling in some of those gaps in the next episode or not. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.